afternoon. Once again, great to see you all back here, and it just gets better from here on in. Not that the last panel was anything worse than what's going to come. It's going to be great. So obviously the next panel is on Blackstar, and we've got a fabulous panel about to take the stage. But as with the other sessions, we've asked a special guest to say a few words on their relationship with David Bowie before the panel begins. So to introduce this one, we have the amazing Jehnny Beth.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about Blackstar specifically. Blackstar is an album that changed my life twice. First on January the 8th, 2016, the day of the release. I knew Bowie to be the exact opposite of the artist who simply goes on repeating himself, so I was excited. There is clearly a Bowie-esque universe, but this universe is a boundless kingdom. So I wondered what genre of music, what new movement, what era, what artist influences he had assembled this time into his new piece of work. I played it. Immediately there was a sense of familiarity. I was thrilled to hear the influence of jazz, the music I first learned to play as a child. There was also an intimacy with the album's sound embedded in its details. You could hear an amp's buds at the end of a song, the sound of pages turning in the vocal booth, the sound of his breathing. You could almost visualize the studio where it was recorded. Bowie was not distant, he was right here. Also, a few months earlier, I had fallen in love with the album To Pimp a Butterfly by the rapper Kendrick Lamar, a masterpiece which I later realized Bowie was listening to during the album's production. So yeah, Blackstar felt like home right from the start, but as always with an artist ahead of their time, a home in the future, a home to wander about and aspire to reach one day. January 10th, 2016. Like most people, I was unaware of Bowie's illness, so I was unprepared. 3 a.m. Los Angeles, I wake up, I open my phone, and I learn the news of Bowie's passing. I wake Johnny Hostile up, who was sleeping next to me, and we immediately play Blackstar. Now, in retrospect, I sometimes wonder why we played that record first. Why not Hunky Dory, my initial favorite record of his from when I was a teenager? Why not Heroes? No, we chose to play Lazarus as though led by an unspoken rule. Look up here, I'm in heaven. I'm sorry. No, but like, it's those words. Those were the first words we heard. And I wept. We sat like this for hours in silence, listening to the music. What was there to say except the words, thank you? It is then that the album revealed itself to me, and it is still unclear if the new circumstances changed my perception or the album itself had changed. But his death, seemed to act as a key, opening a hidden passage into the record's meaning that might never have revealed itself otherwise. There is a certain point in art and in life at which the real and the imagined, the past and the future, the communicable, the incommunicable, the high and the low, life and death, cease to be seen as contradictory. It is this exact point that I suddenly saw in Blackstar. He was speaking to us from beyond. That journey that awaits us all, it seemed that he had taken it for us and had made it his task to sing about. It's only natural for a man who had turned living into a creative lifestyle to turn death into a work of art. An image came to mind. that of him singing from behind a mirror. Orpheus, the Divine Comedy, Ophelia, Twin Peaks. Blackstar stands in a tradition of masterpieces forged exactly at that point of fracture between two worlds, where a living consciousness navigates post-life architecture. Mirrors become portals, language becomes coded, gestures become rituals, time collapses. The precise second before disappearance, still breathing, already gone. Death, not an ending, just another room. Blackstar is a record of someone who is dying, but it is the record of someone who is still a believer in the liberating forces of poetry, of instinct, of love. And it changed my life twice, because this kind of lesson, when passed along, becomes a weapon. Thank you. I would like now to introduce the next panel to the stage to explore the making of the Blackstar album. Please welcome Donny McCaslin, Dr. Leah Kardos, and Jonathan Barnbrook, and their host, Nemone. Thank you.
Wow, good afternoon, everyone. What an introduction. It is an absolute pleasure to be able to welcome you to the British Library for this very special Bowie in Time event, and of course this panel in particular, Bowie and Blackstar. And I want to say a huge thank you to Jehnny, Beth of Savages, solo musician in her own right, for her poignant thoughts on David Bowie's final album in his lifetime. Please give her another hand. Now, we have gathered together a quite fantastic, knowledgeable panel qualified to speak about David's artistry, his work on Blackstar, and his contribution to music, art, and culture more generally. And of course, we have all of you as well, and there will be time for questions at the end. And we're really thinking about this as an exploration of this particular piece of music 10 years on from its original release, to see if it's possible to examine its legacy independent of the context in which it landed, and of course that many of us heard it at that first time round, as Jehnny made reference to. That isn't to say, of course, that we won't acknowledge as well the circumstances in which David Bowie made this piece. So firstly, to the introductions, I am Nemone, broadcaster, DJ, who you often hear on BBC Six Music, and integrative psychotherapist. And I feel particularly honoured to be able to be here this afternoon alongside, right at the end, Jonathan Barnbrook, who co-created alongside David Bowie the album artwork for Blackstar, among others. Donny McCaslin, musician and band leader on the album, and Dr. Leah Kardos, musician, lecturer, and co-founder of the Visconti Studio at the Kingston University, and author of brilliant book, Blackstar Theory, The Last Works of David Bowie. So another round of applause, please, for our fantastic panel. Now, as you've been coming in and getting seated, making yourself comfortable, we've been listening to Blackstar. So there have been strains of Lazarus and Sue and Dollar Days. And in the spirit of thinking about this album 10 years on from its release, I thought we might begin by all of the panel giving us an idea of what Blackstar means to them in 2026 as a sort of jumping off point. So Donny, you made this album with David Bowie back in 2015. What does that mean to you now?
I guess it's, I've thought about it from time to time over the years. Because when it all happened, it was all just happening. And we were just in the middle of it, and things were happening really quickly. But I think, the thing, when I think back now, part of what's so meaningful about that experience sorry. But I get emotional talking about this. Because he was like, for me, he was like a father figure. As I realized after talking about it with my therapist, You know, it was, you know, I grew up in an abusive household, and so had, you know, worked on that over the years, and so to be in this environment with him, and for him to be so into what was happening, you know, just the happiness and the joy that he was showing while we were doing this was incredibly affirming to me. So when I look back on it now, that's something that's really obviously a powerful thing for me, is just that sense of affirmation through the process, and validating, you know, my ideals as an artist, you know, to be courageous, to be fearless, to not settle for doing the same thing, but to keep pushing yourself forward. And obviously he embodied those principles, and so to work with him, you know, was really inspiring. And so I also look at that record now as a living thing, because I've been doing this project called the Blackstar Symphony, where we've taken the record and reimagined it for like 70-piece orchestra, my band, and 3 singers, with Gail Ann Dorsey, and you know, Tony Visconti, who's here today. He did some arranging for the project. So, you know, all these people who are really involved. And so I say that because that the music has grown since the record. And in this other iteration, that's been beautiful, because I always hold the ideal of, like, I wouldn't want to do this unless it was something that I felt that David would be into and he would want to listen to. And a lot of times, I through the process of creating it, I would call Gail and be like, hey, do you think he would be, you know, what do you think of this arrangement?
It has occurred to me, yeah, that's in people's minds. It's like, what would he think of what we're doing now? And does that feel okay? So the fact that all of you have a connection back to him. So that, you know, important. So that's an element for me, and it just feels like, so it feels like the record is still growing and changing as we perform it now, and it's like such an honor to be able to do it, you know, for people, and so. Yeah, those are the brushstrokes for me of what the record means to me now. It's just something, just a total incredible experience in my life that changed me, obviously personally, as I've tried to recount to you, but also, of course, you know, professionally. Musically too. Yeah. That's amazing to hear, Donny. Thank you for sharing. Leah, so you lived, I mean, you heard this album when it first came out. I did. You lived with it for the book. It forms the final piece in your book. So what does it mean to you now in 2026? And do you have a different perspective on it?
Can I just say that the imposter syndrome up here is severe?
Honestly, have you read Leah's book? There is no need for imposter syndrome.
There wasn't an invitation for flattery. I also just want to get something else off my chest just before I answer your question, and that's just fuck you, I love Tim Machine. And then... I knew that was going to come from her. Come on. I'm going to answer that question. It's such a hard question to answer, but I feel like this morning when I was thinking about what I was going to wear today. Yeah, and important as well in this context. And everyone looks so amazing, right? And I was like, I'm going to wear Blackstar. And I thought, no, actually, because how I feel about the album is it's so vibrant and alive. And actually, when I listen to it, it reminds me of life. And it sounds like someone who's alive. And I live with this album. I listen to it probably too much. But I keep coming back to it. And not only does it sound like someone who's very much alive, someone full of vitality. The song, there's anger, there's emotion, there's blood, there's heart. There's breath. I mean, you hear him breathing. You hear him yelling in joy at the music. And so for me, Blackstar represents a kind of, you know, up yours. I'm still alive. I'm still here. And actually, for me, it's also one of the most present albums that he ever released. And I keep going back to it. And you know, I know that the narrative around it, his passing, and that is unfortunately part of it now. You know, it's transformed its meaning in culture. But when I listen to it, it tells me something else. It's not an album about death, it's an album about life. And it still means that to me today. And that's why, the only dress I had that had like plants on it, so that's why I chose it.
Leah's wearing her living dress, okay.
But yeah, I guess that's the best answer I can give. I think it's alive and it's still got stuff to say 10 years later, I think.
It's in the film that many of you may have seen this morning that was shown. I think Tony Visconti talks about hearing those breaths in David's vocal, and that it is him working at a vocal. It's someone still really trying to create throughout.
It's also like a document of his living body. It's there, you know. I mean, like, he's not here anymore, but we have Blackstar, and he's there, and his physicality is there. And the music is physical too. And I've got so much to say about the music, but like, it's sensations and intensities, and it's what life's all about, and that's what that music means to me.
That's wonderful to hear. We will hear more about the music, no doubt. Jonathan.
Yes.
Third and last in this little triptych, but by no means last, really. What does it mean to you?
Well, as a Bowie fan, if I can go to the first time I listened to Blackstar, to talk about it now, was actually when David Bowie was sitting here saying, I'm going to play you my new album.
So this is in reference to, perhaps, would you work on the design?
Yes.
And can you? I know Donny referenced this when we spoke earlier.
Yes.
Had you heard any of the music? This is the context in which you first heard Blackstar.
Well, you can see the other album's covers I designed up here, but usually he was in New York, I was in London, it was all done by email, Zoom. He would wear his pants occasionally on Zoom, which probably I'm not supposed to reveal, but he did it just to wind me up, because I was so uptight about everything. Oh, it's David Bowie, I must keep
I can't look.
privacy. And he's, hi, Johnny, I'm here in my pants. Anyway, so he was sitting here looking at me very intensely as I was listening to him. He wasn't, no, at that occasion, he was amazingly well-dressed.
Can only imagine.
I forgot what I was saying.
David's staring at you while you're listening.
And I realised he was like every artist. They want their work to be taken seriously and to have value. He hadn't changed since he was very young, and that was really refreshing. The other thing was, it was a fantastic album, and it was the album which, to me, was absolutely a product of a man at his psychology, his age. I mean, far be me for me to comment like that, but and now looking back on it, I think even more, it's an absolutely authentic piece of art. It's someone who expresses how they feel, they do it honestly, and with that they touch people. And I don't listen to it much, honestly, because when I hear his voice, there's the vacuum of David, the alive person, not being there. I find that album in particular very difficult to listen to. But I just admire the arc of all the albums, and it ending in Blackstar, and it being without being too sycophantic, being a perfect artistic statement of someone who's at that stage and wants to really express it honestly. I think that's what it is for me.
It's so meaningful in different ways, isn't it? Still enduring to this day and beyond. So I do want to now speak about collaborating with Bowie a bit and his artistry. And Donny, I want to hear about how you first met, because I think, if I've got it right, did David walk into the jazz club where you were playing in New York via Maria Schneider, clearly?
Yeah, basically, Maria and David were working on the version of Sue.
Sue, yeah.
And she had called one day saying that he was trying to describe the rhythmic underpinning of Sue, and that she was like, oh, you should do something with Donny and with his band, and she put on a record of mine. And it was kind of shocking to hear that on the phone, but awesome, of course. And then so maybe a month later, she called, a few weeks later, she's like, yeah, I told David again, he should really do something with you. And man, thank you.
How did you feel about that? Were you like, yeah, did it make sense? Did it feel like it could happen?
Yeah, it felt good. I mean, it was like unexpected. And then the kind of thing that sounds so fantastical, you don't know if it's really going to happen. So in my case, the way I process something like that is I don't dwell on it. I just stay focused on what's in front of me. But then she called again and said, hey, we're going to come down and hear you guys.
No
so
pressure.
That was, no pressure.
Oh.
So I didn't tell, I only told Mark, Juliana, I didn't tell the other guys.
You didn't tell them? Oh.
No, I didn't want them to be to be, because it was like a rehearsal for a recording session.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that was it. So they came, I sort of saw him out of the corner of my eye. They left. I didn't speak to him until a few days later, we had the first workshop for Sue. And at that point, you know, we were talking. And it was surreal. And I've told the story many times, but like, he just literally pulled out his black book and asked me if I could write my like telephone number and email address in his black book. And I was like, I can't believe I'm writing in David Bowie's black book right now. Is this really happening?
You just want to commit that to film somehow, don't you?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we had a series of email exchanges, and I actually brought a couple things I could read at some point.
Yeah, and that first one where he talks about wanting to work with you.
Yeah, I could read it actually.
Yeah, please.
He said, Donny, here's my song. The one to let you know, this is 'Tis a Pity She Was a Whore.
Yeah.
So this is the demo that he made that eventually came out.
Yeah.
You know, with him playing everything, including saxophone.
Yeah.
So that's what I heard. So this is my song. The one idea is that the sax and the keyboard ascend and descend, faster and slower. That's it really, and lots of room for you to blow. My moment of heaven. Sorry. It's so sweet, but he says, sorry. My moment of heaven would be if I could get the Donny McCaslin group to work with me on a few tracks, this being the first. There, I've said it. Please don't play this track to anyone who can play an instrument or I will roll up in a ball. And I mean, I feel like 10 years on, I can read that in public because that illustrates like his great humor.
Yeah.
You know, and there's more examples of that here, but like that.
Read another one.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to hear more from these. Come on, Donny.
So this is after the Maria version of Sue has happened, and he said, Donny, Maria really seems to like the mix that Visconti did on Sue, and me, I think it's the dog's bollocks. Now we can really get going. Okay, and here's another one. I can't remember what this song is about, which song this was in reference to, but he says, Donny, the structure of the song is sound, but now we need to throw a penlight beam on the rest like a PI scouting a motel room. I'm so excited, I just vomited up a 1967 Mercedes.
Yes.
It's such an incredible turn of phrase.
You know, you could do a class on unpacking the references in that note, right? It was just, I was like, man, yeah.
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 And like you say, we'll have more. I want more of these.
Yeah.
Keep your powder dry on those because there's this goofiness that he just never seems to take himself too seriously. There's a lovely bit I found at the recorded version of Word on a Wing, which he did on the Elyseum on March 14th of October 1999 release, where he said, this song is from an album called Station to Station. Of course, the audience go absolutely crazy. And then it's called, I'm singing all the tough ones in the beginning. I can't believe I did this. You know, he knows. And yet he's able to reference that at the same time, very openly. So that gives a kind of goofball feel. Was he like that in the studio as well?
Yeah, I would say, and I'm going to quote Jimmy King here, because you guys know who Jimmy King is, I'm sure, and he said that David was utterly present, you know, when they worked together. And that's the way I would describe it. Like, in the studio, working on lyrics sometimes, totally engaged with what was happening. And then there was, because a lot of this encompassed a lot of time, there was moments where him and Tony were talking about things that they had done and listened to and things that were inspiring to them. And they'd maybe pull something up on YouTube and we'd all watch it. And so there was, that was really, you know, really beautiful. It felt like I was watching sort of rock and roll history in front, you know, and it was great to see that. And then the humor thing, like Tim LaFave, bassist on Blackstar, you know, one of my best friends. Tim has got a great sense of humor, and so he was, you know, engaging. You know, they got going on a lot of, you know, jokes and stuff, and it was really great. You know, I have to say, to be totally honest, I was laughing and stuff, but part of my mind was like, okay, what tune is next? Do I have, you know, like I was still feeling like the band leader pressure, like really wanting to deliver, you know, so. but I had just had a different role or whatever. But yeah, there was a lot of laughing and a lot of manifestations of jokes that were, and I think the thing, like as you heard with that, it was sometimes his humor was really, I guess you'd say highbrow, you know, like really witty. And he's like, damn, man, you know, it was really, you know, because we're more like gutter humor, you know, in my band, you know, it's more lowbrow, I have to say. And you know, so yeah, it was all of those things happened. You know, he was really present. He was also really, he was warm, you know, and as I referenced in the beginning, he was really happy, you know, with what was happening. And of course, that was awesome.
You can hear something of the intimacy in the way that he's speaking to you via email, in the actual finished album feels intimate. I know you've spoken, I think, to Leah actually in the book about the proximity of the musicians in recording some of this.
Yeah.
Leah, will you speak to that in terms of what we're hearing musically and why it gives the sort of feel that it does?
Can we talk about jazz?
Yeah. Can we?
Donny, can we talk about jazz? No, I think that there's something on Blackstar. One of the ingredients is this liveness, and Donny's band has it, chemistry. They have this way of being with each other that allows for this intuitive, spontaneous kind of thing to happen. And when you're listening to it, you're hearing, like I heard from my research and talking to people, it's like first or second take. Everyone's in the room together. It's not the kind of recording practice where you lay down a scratch track and then you go in and replace all the parts one by one, and then it's someone comes in for a day and they do all the keyboards, and then someone else comes in a week later and does all the other things. The band were in the room, playing together in the room, and Bowie was also singing as well with the band, and you can hear bits and pieces of that. And I think that liveness is actually one of the vital ingredients to what you describe as this intimacy, but this kind of realness, this kind of presence that's on the music. But when I say, like, do you want to talk about jazz, I've got this idea that, like, Bowie was searching for this sound for a really long time. I think Bowie's background with jazz goes right back to his childhood. You know, he was turned on to jazz by his half-brother Terry, who put him on to Mingus and Dolphy. And Coltrane, and he picked the alto saxophone as his instrument to begin with, as a boy. And jazz also goes through not just the moments when he engages with jazz musicians, which is quite often through the catalogue, but in the songwriting, I mean, sorry, Donny, jazz chat, but he's doing like modal effects, isn't he? He's doing Lydian mode, he's got lots of sharpened fourths in his melodies, he's playing with elastic structures. I think about the piano solo for Aladdin Sane, where the whole song just laxes out and then this like crazy chaotic solo just unfolds and you make space for it. But also the kind of atmospheric minimalist jazz of, like, say, Subterraneans, right? Or, you know, working with Joey Barron on One Outside, right? Who used to work with John Zorn. Or a small plot of land. You know, all these, you know, South Rise, all this stuff leading up to, and you think, but the jazz is there, and he wants, and I also think that this feeling of, like, intensity, these thickly layered textures, where he builds these intensities, there's a presence of that as well, like not just in the avant-garde Mike Garson piano solos of the 70s, but a bit of that on the outside, but on Earthling, where he's just got these textures happening and they're kind of whipped up to a squall. And he's looking for this sound, and I think he doesn't quite find it until he finds Donny's band. And the secret is not just Donny, it's the band, it's the four of you. And it's the power that he gets from working with this group that has this, like, they work together, it's the chemistry. You know, and so I think you're hearing Bowie finally achieving this thing that he's been looking for a really long time in music, all the way through. And it's this wonderful kind of sense of chaos and intensity and sensation, and it's like almost overwhelming, right? There's moments in Sue where you're like, God, that band is going ham. Like, what is going on, right? But you can also get this sense of, like, complete disorientation and complete, like, what is this? But then you hear him going, woo, you know, like, enjoying it and exclaiming.
There's a reach, isn't there, to draw you back in?
It's like he's surfing
within
through
the
it.
chaos,
yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think it's such a magical quality. And I think it's wonderful. And I think that Donny and your group, you brought it for him on that record, you know. And the fact that you were able to track it, like, I think Tony was telling me that, like, you're setting up and it's like, let's run through it. All right, good. And you were like, no, we've done it, it's done. Move on. You know, it's just unheard of in terms of just banging through the music.
Is that familiar to you guys as a band anyway? Is that how you work?
Yeah. Coming from the sort of the jazz background, you often have a day or two to make a whole record, you know. So that's the sort of the dynamic that we've all, in our own ways, come up through. And then, you know, in preparing for this record, you know, I sent everybody demos and I charted everything out. We had one rehearsal, just the four of us, just to make sure we were cool, and then we were ready to go. You know, so in the studio, to Leah's point, it was like we would play, you know, the "'Tis the Pity She Was a Whore" demo. We'd listen, be like, okay, let's, you know, do it, and we would do it. And so we were cool in terms of the forms and all that stuff, and so I just want to shout out the musicians who, you know, they're such great musicians. Jason Lindner, Tim LaFave, Mark Juliana, and then Ben Monder, who joined us for the last week of recording. These guys are unbelievable, and we were, you know, we were excited and obviously took it seriously, and it was fucking great.
Yeah, I mean, it was. It really was.
You can hear why he might have been smiling through this, through Leah's charting of his search for this sound, this kind of band, this sort of, you know, sonic world. And then here you are, you guys, meeting at this time. I mean, maybe
I could flesh that out a little bit more for
please.
You, just to be, I'll be brief with this, but like one of the things he said after hearing us at the 55 bar that time, he was like, you guys are really loud. Like he was, you know, and you know, the narrative around the record initially, you know, David Bowie does jazz or whatever, and it's not really an apt description of the way that we play or the kind of musicians we are. Like Mark, we all are coming from the jazz background, but like Mark and Tim were super into drum and bass music for a long time, you know, and Jason, super into electronica stuff. And then we formed this band, and I was getting into ambient electronic, and so all of us are coming from the jazz tradition, but also like really deep into other types of music, so that when we would get tunes like "'Tis a Pity She Was a Whore," you know, it wasn't like we're an acoustic jazz band trying to play this with acoustic bass. You know, it was like, oh, okay, all right, this we know what to do with this. Yeah, I mean, not to be cocky or whatever, but like it fit into our aesthetic, if that makes sense. And so it really felt seamless. And I'll just wrap this up really briefly, but like what Leah was saying, the four of us had this energy for sure. And with improvisers, it's the back and forth, right? We're listening to each other. The music keeps going like this because we're open to that kind of change. And then David comes with these unbelievable songs and provides this framework, right? But then we're playing the tunes down because we know what to do and everything, but it's also us, we had the freedom, and he articulated this the first day before we played a note, we had the freedom to do whatever the heck we wanted to, which is kind of what I was going to do anyway, but like...
It's nice to have it confirmed.
No, but to hear him say it, like it was like this, and he was like, Donny, I don't want you to be worried about what this is going to be categorized as. Jazz, rock, I just want you to do whatever you want. It's like, cool. And then he goes to Mark, he's like, Mark, if you're hearing anything polyrhythmic over the bar line, go for it. Mark was like, yeah, cool. You know, it was great. It was great. Okay, I'm sorry, last thing.
He let you guys loose.
Tony could speak to this, but because this is a Tony story, but like that first day we're all just in a row, the four of us, you know, and Tony's like, you guys were like schoolboys, you know, just sitting there. But then once we started playing, it was ferocious, you know, because that's how we do it. And anyway.
So you were on best behavior, and then you certainly were not on best behavior musically, which we can hear. It's incredible. So Jonathan, album artwork done very quickly, clearly in the same, you know, in the same way, over and done in 2 days. How? Let's talk about.
Some of the fans believe that.
Well, let's open it out and let them know. So let's talk about how you and David first conceived of the album artwork. You're there, you're sitting, you're listening to Blackstar. What are those initial feelings, and how did that then morph into what we've seen?
Well, I mean, first to talk about David's humour, and actually he was very good at relaxing the situation. It wasn't, I'm a dictator, Saddam Hussein, you must laugh at my jokes. It was more, actually, you can take the piss out of me as well as part of this process. And I think that is basically what saved him from dying when he was 27. He actually found himself an object of fun in himself. And that relaxed the whole process. And he's quite annoying in that I've never met anybody else who's made the process so enjoyable but managed to get the best work out of me possible. You know, you think about if you work for Kanye West or something like that, the process is probably a nightmare, you know, and maybe there's some good artwork at the end, but every single exchange was fun. We both knew we were pushing to try and do something different, something unexpected, something where the press or the fans, we wouldn't give them what they wanted, you know, which is a very nice picture of David Bowie smiling, not to be dismissive, but you never wanted that, so.
And for the next day, I think you had code name, was it The Table?
It was
the next
The Table,
day?
yes.
So in case phone calls were intercepted, I hadn't got my head around that, but, and could there have been alternative titles and was there a code name for Blackstar?
There was, but I can't remember because it wasn't really done in secret. Like the next day we were working on I was working on the V&A exhibition with Paul Morley down here, and we had to call it Table, so nobody in my studio around me could understand what I was working on. So the V&A wouldn't know that there was a secret album going on at the same time as we were doing the exhibition. They just thought I was talking to IKEA or something like that, not Sony.
Super hush-hush. Okay, understood. But I think what you've explained before is that actually David wasn't certain that it was definitely going to be called The Next Day at the time you were working on that album. For Blackstar, was it much more that he came with that title? Yes,
it was. Should I flick through the
let's
design
have a look
now?
at the artwork that we have now.
That's obviously not Blackstar. You're going to interrupt me if I go on for too fucking long.
We'll all interrupt you
yes,
if you
all
go on
right.
for too
So
fucking long.
the next day, I learned a huge amount about what an album cover is. I know I'd done a couple before that, but in the 1970s, 80s, an album cover, you know, the best advert was actually in the record shop. You know, it was there, you see it, that would appear in the music press. The role of an album nowadays, it's very much, it's everywhere. You know, it's streamed on a website a month before it appears in people's emails. So I believe an album cover now is a system that has to work through all these different technology. And design has always worked with technology. You go back to the printing press, it was a new technology. People used it in the best possible way. The two particular things which I learned on the next day were fan participation. These are just various screen grabs from what I saw on Instagram. And I'd never imagined that the square would become a meme. You know, what I had imagined was this, which was when Sony were going to do publicity for it, we would fly post over other posters with the square. And that actually comes from my background of working in anti-advertising, of defacing other people's adverts. We all become corrupted. So for Blackstar, the technology and the different uses were absolutely at the beginning of it. So firstly, the original name was not the words Blackstar, or one word Blackstar. It was just the star itself. And that came from this guy, William Burroughs, who I know David was a big fan of his cut-out technique. But I wrote to him when I was a student in 1989 and said, William, I haven't got any money. Can you write some text for a college project? You just write to William Burroughs and ask him. And his agent wrote back and said, no. But William will be in London on this day. You can go and talk to him about your project. So I went to him. He was drunk. He was in this October gallery. And I said, I'm already conscious it's gone on too long.
It really hasn't.
What's the future of typography for the next 10,000 years? And it's the question students ask me, which I fucking hate. And he said, well, do my William Burroughs impression. Well, it's in between Egyptian hieroglyphs, 1989, remember? And airport pictograms. I don't know. And what was he talking about? He was talking about emojis.
Yeah.
So the Blackstar symbol is an emoji for the album, Isabel, without being crass about it.
Serious emoji.
A serious emoji. Yeah. And so, technically, you probably don't know this, but in typography, certain characters are allotted certain spaces on the computer. Blackstar is one of the characters. It's U2605. Okay, so that means that if you specify that, no matter what technology it appears on, if it has a typeface, it will show that character. So this is actually one of the roughs I sent Bowie, which shows how the Blackstar character would work in different media. I don't know if I want to address Blackstar secrets, but there are a number of things in the album which I didn't say, often actually directly to Bowie. But this is one of the things we worked on, which was his name. We didn't say the front cover contains the name of Bowie made out of star shapes. We just let it happen, and then eventually people got it. And I think that was one very important lesson I learned from Bowie, because when I did the next day, so many people, I was going to swear then, were so rude about it that I wrote this really long blog justifying the cover. And then he phoned me up and said, Jonathan, sorry, Jonathan, it's David here. It's a bit more Keith Richards than David. It's David here. Why did you write that blog? And I said, because I wanted to explain. He said, take it down. Just let people find their own space. And that was such an important lesson. You don't have to justify it. What you should do is let people find their own space. And I think that's what people have been doing with David's music all through the albums. You know, the relationship with a pop star is not a relationship with them, it's yourself and how you find space and meaning with space and time within what they do. So, yeah. Oh, this is someone on Facebook who discovered, I'm so happy when I saw this, that people discovered that it said Bowie. And then I put the last bit in, because someone goes on about Alistair fucking Crowley all the time when they talk about David Bowie. So, to me, the best expression of it is the vinyl. And credit to Sony for actually producing it as how Bowie and I wanted. It's because it's a physical thing. Now, I didn't know David was ill at the time. That's something we can go into. I haven't, in particular, touched on the aesthetics, beautiful or not, on this. But what was important in the songs, as I interpreted them, was the idea of mortality. It kept coming through. And so the vinyl, we all love vinyl because of its physicality, but we also love it because it tells a story. We've had it a year, there's a scratch. We have it another year, there's a coffee ring on it or someone's phone number written on it. So it tells a story of our lives in the way digital can't. And I wanted that album cover to be like that, to tell the story of the person and to expose the body almost by showing the vinyl. Blacks in Spinal Tap, they have a
Not a reference I was expecting.
One more black, yeah.
Yeah, yes, a black record with a black label. But here, you won't believe how difficult it is to stop record companies putting logos on stuff. So one side of it, at least, has the presence of what I felt emotionally the music was. Yeah. And I don't know about you, Donny, but he would never want to say what a song meant. He would leave it open always for you to interpret. And he would get quite annoyed. I remember saying, well, what about this? Jonathan, just take it as you find it. You know, it wasn't like, it's about this and your design should be about this. It was about how you, as an individual in your unique place in the world, you interpret it.
So how does it grow between you then? If he's not giving you that, what are the conversations between you and where does your thinking go?
Well, the first conversation in New York, he showed me some particular roughs. I saw someone had put them on the internet the other day, which I was quite surprised at. And they were quite illustrative. So I honestly thought they weren't quite right. And then we discussed having a picture of him on the front. And I said, nah, it's not that kind of album, David. Of course, I didn't say it like, nah, it's not that kind of... I went, well, maybe not, David. I think, let me go away and work on it. And it just seemed, the music, as you say, was so beautifully warm, but also so taken back to really the barest of instruments, that the cover and everything around it should be clean. It should be a respite for people to contemplate, not to busy itself with logos or to push itself in your face. It was there for contemplation, the album, and that's what the design tried to reflect, really.
And the constellations of the titles of the tracks and that kind of imagery as well.
Yes, I mean, that's just evoked by the music. I mean, I can't rationalise it. So. I'll just quickly go through the last few slides here. And this thing of small on an email, big on a billboard. This was in Hammersmith, just hopefully it worked. And one of the very important things was sharing. And I talked before Bowie passed away about this, was that people would often write to me and say, is it okay to get a tattoo of the logo you've done for David? And I'd write back, of course it's fucking okay. I mean, if you're stupid enough to want to deface your body with a bit of graphics I've done, which is actually, you know, because of your love of David, that's actually a wonderful thing. And I thought that this is wrong. So what we did in collaboration with David, and what's still up today, is the Blackstar Bowie Net website, where you can download all the graphics and the typefaces for non-commercial use. You know, if you're going to do pirate merchandise, you're going to do it anyway. This won't make any difference. So here, even with the font, actually, it was designed with a font that was open source, so anybody could use it in any way they wanted. And people do.
Yeah.
And, you know, these may not be the most aesthetic, designery uses. But to me, what is most satisfying is that they're part of people's lives. And that's all I want from my work with David, is it to be worthy of the music and to be worthy in within that situation of they appreciate David Bowie, and this is part of the appreciation.
Oh.
So that's that. So.
It's great.
Yeah.
That was great. It didn't go on too long. Thank you very much for opening us out and truly understanding more about that beautiful gatefold vinyl as well. And I know you touched on it there. And when we first met, you said you weren't aware of David's illness throughout that process. So how was it to kind of become aware of that and to have released the album without knowledge of that?
I mean, there was a huge moment of realisation when he passed away, actually, suddenly how the lyrics pointed to it. You know, of course, I think we shied away from talking to it. Whenever we talked about death quite a lot when we were working on the design, and this idea of going back to the Big Bang, this kind of thing. But they always discussed in terms of universal themes. It wasn't something that was directly happening to him. It was something that should appear in a good work of art and should be represented. And I think, honestly, it just made the whole process a lot easier to deal with. It's like Scott Walker, he said, I heard an interview with him, he said he never discussed the content of his albums and the emotional tone because it's too heavy in a way. Let's enjoy the time, the process of making it, but we don't have to necessarily directly talk about the subject matter all the time. So, yeah.
To the title track, Blackstar, which I think had an unusual genesis. I mean, Donny can speak to this probably more than any of us. Was it tracked last, I think? Is that
no.
one? Or Bowie's vocals were laid first, or?
My memory is that there was 3 sessions, 3-week-long sessions, and so this was before the 3rd session. And he sent the tune, and the description was like, this will be in 2 halves, and we'll do it in the studio. And we recorded it early on in that 3rd week. And it happened, it was like first take, yeah. Because the middle section, as you know from the record, is kind of open. And yeah, he just said, yeah, it'll be free. And we're like, cool, and we just did it. And Ben was there, Ben Monridge. So we had his vibe and his creativity sonically. I mean, he was just killing right from the beginning. So when we get to that middle section, he played some vibey, atmospheric stuff, and we just kind of played free for a minute. And maybe we stopped. I think Tony probably remembers better than me, but I think maybe then we did stop, and then we recorded the second half of the tune, like just then, and then they put it together. But it happened, yeah, it was like, I think it was first take. and it just happened really quickly.
That's incredible for a track of that length as well. I mean, Leah, you wrote in your book about, I think it was the mix engineer Tom had said, you can't give it away. You can't give it all away too early, because clearly you're going on a journey through that title track. Say more.
I paid a membership for this website called Mix with the Masters. It's like really expensive, but because he talks through the mix of the album, and I just really wanted to hear more about it.
Yeah.
And he is Tom Elmhurst is such an amazingly subtle mix engineer, and like he's really thinking about not just the sounds in the foreground, but how the sounds also have depth. And I mean, it's just amazingly put together. But I mean, when I first heard that song, I was just so proud of my favorite artist, because it was like one of the best things I'd ever heard. And I thought, I was just so excited that he was working at that caliber again. And I think my friends are here as well, and we all felt the same. It was just so exhilarating to hear that song, that single with the video when it came out in November 2015. And it blew my face off. I was just so proud of my favorite. I remember emailing Tony. He's like, oh my God, you must be chuffed. And he's like, yeah. So it was so exciting, you know, to see your favorite artist firing on all cylinders like that. It's thrilling.
And Donny, for you, of hearing that finished mix for the first time, I mean, what was that like, having been in the process of making it and then hearing?
Oh yeah, it was intense. I went to David's place and like was in his office, and he was like next door not feeling well, but he wanted me to listen. I was going to listen. We were going to listen together, probably like your experience, Jonathan. But then in the end, he wasn't feeling good, so I sat there and I just listened to it from start to finish. And Eileen, who works in his office, you know, then we listened to the stuff from No Plan, you know, and it was, I just like opened, it was really emotional, as you can tell, you know, it was like, oh my God, you know, and then I opened my eyes and there was David with Coco Schwab, you know, his assistant, and he just, you know, and he came in and then we had like a really, you know, memorable conversation. And it was really, I think it was just really moving. I mean, of course I was listening and I was like, you know, I could have, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or, you know, like I was like, you know, perfectionist, things that I felt like I could have done better, but also just like, wow, to sum it up, I felt like that's what it sounds like when we played it in the studio. That's what it feels like when we play together. That's us, and that's some serious shit.
Yeah.
You know, and that was what's so gratifying to us, and I give Tony and a lot of credit, and David, you know, Tony worked deeply on all of it after we departed, but what you hear is the vibe that it was in the room, with us all close together and vibing off each other. And that's so beautiful that they left it that way. So moving to me.
And I think we can hear it. That's the beauty of it. I mean, David Bowie talked about pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. I mean, at one stage, going a little further into the water than you feel you can, and when your feet don't touch the bottom, you're in the right place to do something exciting. Tony has also said that David was always looking for that new element and unique musicians to be the carriage for his new ideas. So Maria Schneider was clearly, you know, coming in on Sue was the beginnings of this realization of the sound we then hear in Blackstar. She's written actually about making Sue, or In a Season of Crime, saying that when David came into the picture for her, he showed that dark can be fun.
Yes.
And that it was a stark reminder to her, because she'd been working on material that I guess wasn't so much in that direction at that time.
True.
And she heard, I think she was working on the Thompson Fields, she heard some of her own music, and then Sue came on the radio and she felt, oh my God, what have I done? But she emailed David saying, what have you done to me? And he said, my work here is done. So I kind of, clearly here's someone who not only wants to be creative themselves, but is really trying to draw, you know, other people into that sort of feeling and area and ability. And I just wondered if that rang true for you.
Yeah, it does. And there was we had a conversation at one point where he was like, this is what I think I hear for you, Donny, in the future. And it was something about, you know, improvising with electronics while I was playing live, you know. And and it's something that I ended up doing years later. Sort of organically, it came that way, and I remember that conversation. He was, you know, just encouraging me to do exactly what you articulated. And I think about, Leah asked me yesterday about my new record, and I was like, there's moments that, because it's just like we've added this heavy guitar element to my band, and there's a few moments on the record that really remind me and Tim of Blackstar. And it wasn't intentional, but it was just that vibe of all the things you just talked about. And I could be super specific about it, but like, it just really, not something I ever would have imagined before I met David Bowie, is maybe the way to put it. And yes, I've been out of my comfort zone, and I continue to do that. And it's an honor and a pleasure to feel like he really pushed me in that direction in the most beautiful of ways.
It sounds like that relationship kind of was a different blueprint for you in a way of being, not only personally, but professionally, like you said.
Definitely.
And Jonathan, for you, do you feel like he pushed you? I mean, you referenced it earlier, but
yes,
sounds like it was like a gnarly process maybe in places.
Gnarly. I mean, it was a really enjoyable process. I mean, of course you're going, fucking hell, it's David Bowie, he wants me to do something good. But also you're going, this is an amazing project, and this person takes me seriously and wants me to respond in the best way I possibly can. You've always felt valued with David. And I would say one of the amazing things about him was he never patronised his audience. This is a slightly different side, but you know, being that long in the music industry, he was always respectful. And when we talked about the design, he talked about what the fans might expect, how he wanted it to represent the album. There was never a note of patronisation about anybody or anything. In fact, he felt very lucky to be in the situation he was in. I don't know if you felt that, Donny, when you spoke to him. He was actually quite appreciative. And it would be quite easy to be cynical about it, but he never was. That didn't answer the question whatsoever. It was.
I think you kind of answered it.
Do you want some more? Were you going to say something else?
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that what that reminds me of is that he was really, I think, curious to know what the press reaction to Blackstar would be, and he was really pleased when it was so utterly positive.
Yes.
You know, he was real, and that's so that moment that I described to you when I was in his office and we were talking. So this is when, before the record came out, but when certain music critics had been invited to listen to it.
Yeah.
And so the feedback had started to come in, and I know it meant a great deal to him.
I'd like to know what it means to you guys. Like, it's been 10 years. I mean, this is collaborative work. It's your work too. Are you proud of it? Like, is it, you listen to it and you're proud of what you...
Donny's passing over to Jonathan. I mean, you start, Jonathan.
As much as it is to be immodest, I think it's one of the best things I've done. And I like it because I didn't rationalise it, which may sound really weird. I learned to trust my instinct, and I learned that from David. That's what he gave me. And it took... I mean, I think the next day is a more interesting intellectual cover. But I think Blackstar, matching the emotion and seeing the wave of reaction when he passed away, I mean, I felt quite honoured, you know, that it could be part of it and people felt it was appropriate.
Of that legacy.
So, yes. One thing I wanted to say, slightly different, was what we haven't talked about, which is very important for the song Blackstar, was how it represented the spirit of the time and how Bowie had done that all through his career. And when I heard Blackstar, the world was fucked. I mean, we didn't imagine the fucked state it would be in now. But we're talking...
I mean, it was fucked then.
Yeah, it was fucked then.
It was.
Wow.
But the dark psychology that was going on, that song was absolutely a perfect representation of it, and how he caught that atmosphere, I think was... Yeah, just amazing. And it's something that he managed to do, you know, months, years before anybody else, and he did it in that song. To do with others, I think.
And Leah, the themes on Blackstar, just talk us through some of those, because some of them are universal Bowie kind of motifs, and some of them were different for this particular album.
Well, a wise person once said that all art is unstable, and its meaning is not necessarily that was implied by the author, and that there is no authoritative voice, there are only multiple readings. And Oscar Wilde also said you analyse art at your peril. But of course I went and analysed the albums.
So let's have yours, and we won't hold you to you're allowed to change it.
No, but I think it's again, I'm sorry, I'm becoming very academic, but like the late Stuart Hall also talked about the circuit of culture, where meaning is created is in the conversations. And it's constantly being written and rewritten and evolving based on discourse, right? And I think the thing about Blackstar is that his passing irrevocably became part of the discourse, which then became part of the meaning. And it remains to be that way for many people, some people not. But when I wrote the book, I really wanted to get involved in that conversation and just maybe come at it from a different angle. And so I really wanted to, and also because being a fan, I had so much emotion wrapped up in it, the experience of it. And so it was a clarifying process for me to strip away everything that I thought I felt and heard and perceived in the music and just begin from the beginning. And so I did sort of just look at the bare bones of the music and build it again, and like what's the melody, what's the tempo, what's the key, what's the structure, what's the modality, okay, what's the voice doing, and how is the voice inspiriting the lyric, and what is the lyric and the voice and Bowie's voice style, and then the vocal effects, and then the arrangement, and then the production, and building it out, and then into all these other areas, and then finding the tissues of connection. And I think that I found that process really healing and also just really affirming, because it showed me that actually this is, if you want it, the depth is there. And actually, if you want to go looking for a deeper experience, it's there. And it's one of my favorite things about David Bowie's music, is you can enjoy it on the surface as a kick-ass song, great melodies, right? Good music, good pop music. But if you want to get further and scrape into the layers, and if you want to dig around in the dirt, there's stuff, there's treasure to find. And I think, you know, I could sit here and waffle on for hours about, Blackstar, you know, themes that are in it, But I think everybody in this room, you know, if they want to dig into Blackstar, if they want to find stuff in there, what you're going to find is going to be really affirming and really comforting. You know, there are themes in this album that speak, I think, hopefully, about existence. You know, I think that there's something to be said that celebrates life in this album. And I think, you know, especially with the way that, like, intensity of sensation, with the way of chaotic elements are dealt with, they're, you know, ridden through, the way that Bowie arrives via, you know, this kind of journey towards this ending point through Dollar Days and I Can't Give Everything Away, it ends in such a beautiful place. And I think that, you know, anyone who's sad or grieving or worried about their humanity, their identity, their existence, their mortality, what's next, I think that there is some comfort to be found if you want to spend time with this album. And I think that's such a gift, you know. And I think it's something that I'm always going to enjoy. I don't want to say any more than that.
It's beautifully expressed. Leah, honestly, Blackstar Theory's work, the tapestry that you have woven around those last works is quite incredible. And Donny, to you, as Leah was asking and probing, what does it mean to you now, that piece of work? Are you proud of it?
Nah, it's just another session.
Whatever.
I do that stuff all the time, you know.
Over the years.
Nah, it just, you know, as I was trying to, you know, it means a lot to me, and obviously personally, you know, for what, you know, what he represented, as I was talking about earlier, and how affirming that process was, and the confidence, you know, that it gave me, and so all of that is still very present with me, you know, and so I think I've had sometimes people will maybe be like, is it kind of weird for you to people like, oh yeah, you're the guy from Blackstar? I'm like, no, it's not weird. That's something I'm really proud of it.
Yeah.
Now, I know there are a lot of people here who may have questions, so I'd love to open the floor to anyone who would like to ask. We have a couple of roving mics, so do you want to come down here to this gentleman here? The mic is coming.
Hi.
Say hi.
Cheers, thank you. Well, I'd like to ask Donny, are you going to bring Blackstar Symphony to England?
Yeah.
When might that happen?
Yeah, the intention is to, and all I can say, the current news is that they're talking about Birmingham, Manchester, and London sometime at the end of this year or next year, early next year. So we're working on it. Yeah.
It's going to become a reality. Right, we have another question here on the end, and then one here.
Thank you for some wonderful conversation. I just wonder what you all thought of the videos that accompanied the songs, and if Donny and Jonathan had any input into them.
I mean, I had zero input, and I love the videos.
I had a little bit of input on Blackstar. I did the animation for I Can't Give Everything Away, and that was mainly due with the record company because I believe David had passed away then. I mean, for me, my feeling was trying not to be over-sentimental, just play it quite straight. That's why it's a typographic animation. There's no appearance of David in it. We discussed that, but decided to keep him out because we wanted people to concentrate on the music, even though it's David. You know, it's a beautiful song. Let's emphasise the song. Let's not talk about now where we are grieving for David, but let's talk about what the song is about. So,
Didn't he show you the drawing of the lady with the tail?
he did, yes. That was in our first meeting, the lady with the tail. Oh, yes. So the first Blackstar video. Thank you. You're a very good prompter.
Useful that Leah's here.
For the first meeting, the drawings he had, one was with these androgynous beings with tails. And I think that appeared in the Blackstar video, actually. So, yeah. I don't know what to say other than
No, thank you. Thank you for your question. Right, we have a couple down at the front, actually, if that's possible to move that far. We're going to have to pass.
Hey, sorry, for Donny, you mentioned the demo for "'Tis Pity She Was a Whore," which we've heard. We haven't heard the demos for the other songs. You have. Can you tell us about them, and can you tell us what we would learn from them in terms of his musicality, his creative process?
Yeah, I would say the demos were all, he did them at home, and they were all the essential elements for the songs were in place. Maybe that's the way I would describe it. You know, okay, so maybe the recording quality was lo-fi or whatever, but like, you know, there was the synth bass, the drum machine, guitar if it was present, and vocal, or either with lyrics or without lyrics. So really, it was the DNA, all the essential stuff was there, and so what we took from that was like we locked in. That's what my son says. Dad, lock in. You know, we locked in like you know those essential parts, and then you know in my case I orchestrated a bunch of stuff for winds and I improvised some lines and whatnot. But what you hear on the record in terms of the bass line, you know, the piano synth voicings, a lot of that was there in the demos. Yeah.
I'd like to know if the drum machine at the beginning of I Can't Give Everything Away, is that from the demo? Do you remember?
Oh, that's a good, I don't remember. I don't think it was. But the harmonica,
Yeah.
you hear, that's the same on the record. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Which is David, as you know, David
The demo,
playing it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Thanks. We have another question here. You guys could pass that down. Thank you very much. Hi.
Hi. Leah, I also love Tin Machine. Incidentally, no, just wanted to say that. No, yeah, okay. If you guys don't, just get a pair of New Year's, as somebody was saying. My question is also for Donny. I went to see Lazarus, and I wanted to know if you were involved with that project as well. I went to see Lazarus just after David had died, and basically I came out of there feeling like I'd been brutalized because it's so heartbreakingly beautiful. And I just wanted to ask.
I wasn't involved, but I saw it a couple times, and in one of these like ironic twists, I was, you know, we were making Blackstar, and then at some point, I became aware that he was working on Lazarus.
He was doing both, yeah.
And the musical director of Lazarus is a good friend of mine. So we were both doing these things at the same time. Both had signed non-disclosure agreements, so not able to talk about it to each other. And it's like, oh, you're doing, you know, it was one of those moments.
Oh.
So I did recommend one of my students who's from England to play the saxophone chair, Lucas Dodd. And he played the saxophone chair, so I guess that was my involvement in Lazarus, recommending a guy for the gig, yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. He did both concurrently. Right, another question. This gentleman.
Hello, I'm very interested. You've all talked about the humour involved in recording the album, which is a very, knowing what we know now, that if he knew he was not long for this world, the humour in the recording of it. And, Donny said that you felt his humour was highbrow, but the email you read out uses the phrase "the dog's bollocks," which is which is Viz, which is the lowest of the lowest brow you can get in the UK. And I wondered whether that humour, how that in the recording sessions and when you were doing the design, Jonathan, just to say that knowing what he knew that we didn't and you didn't, but he still had that capacity for humour.
Yeah.
And how important that was.
Yeah, I mean...
We have two different experiences, actually, because Jonathan didn't know, and Donny...
I did know.
You did know.
I did know, yeah. I said in the press at the beginning that I didn't know because I wanted to honor his memory and honor his family and not have it about me talking about I knowing this or not me knowing that. Like, I just thought that was not something I felt comfortable doing. It didn't feel authentic, even though I was lying. But now, 10 years later,
enough.
I can say, yes, I knew. And so, there was obviously, we had some sort of heart-to-heart conversations.
Oh. Yeah.
But the humor was fucking great. It was so great. And he could go very into the lowbrow, which we set the bar low. He was there with us. But then there was all these moments, like I was talking about earlier with the regurgitating a Nick 1960, who comes up with that kind of humor, So it would both were present, throughout the time together, and it was really cool. Really cool to witness that and inspiring. And also just that, he was facing his situation very sort of head on, very sort of matter-of-factly, I think is the way I would put it. So, obviously I'm an emotional person, yeah, he was very clear-sighted about what was in front of him. And yeah.
There is a version of the Blackstar album, which I will never show publicly, which is a very rude version that we passed back and forth to me and David, and that was like 2 or 3 weeks before it came out. So he was still joking right at the end. And I think if you have darkness in your life, it's a relief to get lightness as well, and to actually live in the moment and enjoy it. And that's the only explanation I can give for that. I may show that one day, but it'll be maybe 20 years' time.
Oh, you've now it's out there. We'd like to see it. I think that speaks to the authenticity. Lovely question. Thank you very much. Anybody else with a question? We'll have one at the back and then a couple here.
Thank you very much. Are there any songs from those sessions that we haven't heard?
Let's see. I'm not at liberty to discuss that. No, I guess I would say, yes, there's songs that we didn't.
Very simple.
But there was things that we recorded that haven't come out. But what I don't know is, was the vocal ever finished? Were the lyrics ever finished? That I don't know. So who knows, I guess you would say. Yeah, there was a couple things I really liked. But I just don't know if they were ever finished. So time will tell, I guess.
Might be a question for our next panel. You can save that one up for Tony. Did somebody else have a question over here? No. That was your question. That was your question. I think we've done them all. So
I have a question, sorry.
You have a question?
Can we have just one more email?
Yes. I was wondering, have we finished the email discourse?
Okay, well, I give you the spice, let's see. Oh, this is really sweet. It says, Donny, I hope all is great with you. The more I listen, the more I feel that we've really got something here. I want to throw track 2 or 3 pieces in this week. We should have another crack at Sue on Monday and nail it. Because Sue was the one that took us long. I think you know that. It took us a longest to get, it was 8 or 9 takes or whatever. And then, okay, this is a humor. Really made me laugh to see your name and then Death Grips on the subject line. Ha! I thought he'd stop performing and recording, but apparently that's not the case. I'm pleased, as it's good to have something obnoxious in the mix to get the day started.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
so
fantastic.
good, man.
Thank you so much.
So good.
Listen, I have referenced it. We do have a delight next. The legendary producer-musician Tony Visconti in conversation with the complete Bowie author Nicholas Pegg coming up. And also just a cabaret later where you will see Jehnny, Beth alongside Nico Wiedemann, Daniel Brandt, Blixa Bargeld, Gudrun Gut and Mark Reeder. Thank you all for coming this afternoon.
Thank you.